Hey, Book Warriors.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us tonight. We are broadcasting early this month. Normally we do our book club chats on the last Sunday of the month, but Sunday being Halloween, we decided we would do this a little bit early. So we are so excited to have Dorothy St. James with us, author of The Broken Spine. Yay. Such a fun book. Such a fun book. I really, really enjoyed reading it. And we're so glad to have you here, Dorothy.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed listening to it on Audible. The narrator did a fantastic job. I really enjoyed it.
Did she get Southern accents down?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she did them too well, not overdone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Flossie had a pretty thick accent.
Yeah.
But that would be expected for her age range and stuff. So that seemed appropriate to the character. They were very distinctive. You could really tell it was.
I've never listened to my own audiobooks, so I don't even know what they sound like. Okay, so we're going to jump into some questions here. The first is, I love the idea of the secret book room, and I'm just really curious, how did you come up with that idea?
Well, I read an article about that some libraries are becoming bookless libraries. And I started thinking, wow, well, my knee-jerk reaction was, oh, I hate that idea. Even though I read a lot of ebooks, I hate the idea of losing my library and not being able to wander through the library. And I've always been playing with an idea that I would like to write a cozy mystery set at the Library of Alexandria, but I have no background for that. Yeah. I don't feel like doing all that research. So I thought, kind of do the same thing, but in modern times, the same kind of idea, losing the Library of Alexandria in a small town. Yeah. And what would that librarian do? And of course, what she would do is whatever she needed to protect the books, to save the books. So so I liked that idea so much that I started playing around with it and trying to find my characters and playing with the idea of technology and the old way of doing things and that tension's just going to always be there in our lives.
Yeah, that just reminds me, not one of our questions, but I loved the way that you opened the book with all of those facts, like all of that sort of information about books and ebooks and everything. And I mean, it really grabbed me. I thought that was a very, very cool opening.
Thanks.
I felt like it really rang true too, because I've been on, Melissa and I are on the Friends of the Library board in Orange County where we live now. But back in Texas, I lived in a town called Mansfield, and I was on the Friends of the Library board there. And a few times I went to the Texas Library Association conference. And I remember for some reason, one particular year, there was a big shift. I think it was when ebooks really took off. And you could just tell there was a whole different tone to the conference. People were fearful about their jobs and what the future of libraries was going to be. And I even remember the city librarian at that time saying, is this just going to become a room full of computers? Is that what the library of the future is? And so everybody had to start thinking about how to re-envision libraries. But
all of those books going into the landfill was like, oh my gosh, how could that even happen? Why wouldn't they donate them or something? But to go back into the landfill.
I said the ones that could be sold get sold.
Yeah.
And then everything else would go to the landfill.
No, but still.
But that's what happens at libraries. I interviewed librarians about it, and the collection is not static.
Yeah.
They go through and they call books out, and a lot of those books go to the landfill.
That's so sad.
Really.
Well, I remember our librarian in Mansfield talking about how citizens would get really upset about that, but it's like, but there is a cost to that. If a book is not being used a lot and it's taking up space and they can't get something new in there, sometimes those things have to be done. And we do, our library that we're at now, we do a used book sale. So at least money comes back into the library from the books that are sold and people can donate.
But then getting the rest of them hauled away was a really big issue the first year.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, and then where did they go? I don't know where they went.
Yeah, that's true. Who knows, But I remember too, there was a group that would come in and kind of go through and look to see if there were those very valuable ones in there, because we wouldn't know necessarily, even though we were book lovers, we wouldn't know just by looking at something. Like I remember one time there was like a police training manual, and it was worth like $70, and like we would have all thought, oh, well, this is going to be outdated, throw it away. And it's like, no, that was worth $70. So kind of piggybacking on that. So the South Carolina setting, we felt like it was really, really fun. And it was interesting to see how the town leadership really wanted to bring it into the 21st century and try to make, some adjustments, that's always kind of difficult. But, and we know you love your library. And so was it hard to dismantle your fictional one? I mean, you've kind of hinted at that, but.
Yeah, it was kind of hard. I grew up going to the library. Actually, the town that I lived in didn't have a library when I was young. They had just the bookmobile, which is like Narnia, right? Stepping onto a bookmobile and just going through all the books. And then they finally built a library, and I still have that library card that they gave me. And just to be able to go, and nowadays we call it the free bookstore, because there's not a lot of places you can go where you're not expected to spend money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you can get as many books as you want, try them out, return them.
Well, I just read the Paris library for our book club, and there was just some note in there, like some quote that one of the librarians made, that the libraries, they had to keep the libraries open during World War II in Paris. It was the American Library in Paris. They had to keep it open because it's the place for people that have nowhere else. And that just, really resonated with me. And you see the people going in and out of the library, and it is a really safe place, and so dismantling it, like happens in your book, it changes the whole vibe and energy of that place.
In a way, yes. But a lot of libraries are going through, they might not be getting rid of their collections, but they're going through changes very similar. They are being required to be the community center. A lot of towns don't have community centers anymore. Mount Pleasant really doesn't have a community center. We have the libraries where we have community center rooms. That's where they have art classes, all this stuff. And their budgets aren't getting any bigger.
No.
So they have to allocate space for all this and the budgets to do more and more and more, while also having to buy audiobooks now, ebooks now, and paper books.
Yeah, I mean, even in the schools, they don't call them libraries anymore. They call them media centers, and they're media center specialists, not librarians.
I did not know that.
In the schools that we've been in, yeah, it's interesting, and the library is so much more than just a library these days.
It really is nowadays.
They almost should call them just like a cultural center or something.
Yeah.
But and then give them way more funding and way more space.
Yeah.
Because how they're going to do all that. Well, and so many of the arts are interrelated anyway. You've got writers, dancers, actors, theater, all that music.
Ours, actually, we even had somebody teach yoga at the library once a week.
So, we have Tai Chi twice a week at our library.
Yeah, so that's interesting.
Awesome.
So we kind of touched on my next question, but given that you talked to a bunch of librarians about this, how do they see libraries staying relevant? And like you said, they have to buy ebooks and audiobooks and all of these things, and the libraries have become so much more than just going to check out. I remember going to the library as a kid too, and with my mom to check out the Curtain, Agatha Christie's last Poirot book. I mean, it's like that's like seared into my brain for whatever reason. So how are the librarians that you talked with kind of handling this shift?
Everyone I've talked to is very upbeat and excited about the opportunities, and their emphasis is more on, you need to, as librarian patrons, let people know that, especially the elected officials, that libraries are important and they need to continue to be funded. Their main concern is funding. They love that it's being opened up to more options and opportunities. And for example, my oldest sister has some pretty severe learning disability, and she never was able to read until she got her hands on ebooks. And for some reason, she can actually read an ebook where she can't read a paper book.
Oh, wow.
And so like very late in life, in her 40s, she started reading books, and she reads at least 2 books a week now.
Wow.
Wow.
So to have, the different options for books, and some people can't read, but they can listen to an audiobook. It is so important that we have all of those opportunities for everybody.
I need all 3 of those in my own house. As I listen when I walk and when I drive, and then I have a print book just for during the day, and then I've got my ebook for night in bed. So.
Exactly.
Well, I've heard from readers that say if they have vision issues that they like audio and have asked, oh, when's such and such coming out in audio and stuff like that. So yeah, that is interesting. So moving away from books and now talking about the cat. We both loved the cat.
Yes.
And Dewey and True had such a cute relationship, and he became a really important part, of the story in many ways. So we're just wondering, is he based on a real cat that you know, or how did you come up with him?
He's not really based on a real cat that I know. I, have a cat. I love cats. I don't have a brown tabby cat. And I have not been able to find one with a skull marking on its head. They usually have the scarab beetle marking on their head, which I love that idea. And I thought, if you change a beetle a little bit, it could turn into a skull.
Use our imaginations.
And cats, sense things that we can't. And I just like playing with that and giving her this creature that she needed to take care of. And she's never had a pet before. That just kind of throws her off a little bit.
It was a good bridge between her and Jace too.
Yeah.
Because it showed
he's good with cats.
Yeah. Yeah.
And who doesn't love a man that's nice to animals?
Right. Okay, so small town politics. So we lived in a place that had a lot of small town politics too. So that it's just way more serious than you might ever imagine if you're not like in the know what's going on. So I know you grew up in a smallish town, right?
Right.
So was there a colorful political scene? Like how did you go about painting the politics authentically?
Well, my background before I was writing, I was a urban planner, and I worked for a council of governments, which is a regional planning agency, and they would farm me out to the small towns in my region, in the Low Country. And so I got to work with a lot of small towns, and it was just so interesting how different the politics and the people for a lot of these small towns, they're if you just look at them on paper, they're all identical. Mm-hmm. But when you go and you work with the people, the sense of place, they were very, very different on how they approach things. And it was just, I like taking that into that experience of learning about small towns and how they're all different and very interesting.
So even within the same region, you found distinct differences in the small town. Can you give us any examples?
So there was this town of St. Stephen, which is in Berkeley County, right outside of Charleston County. Mm-hmm. Very rural, very small, adorable town. And they were very well integrated and worked together. It seemed like they wanted to move forward. So they were more forward thinking than some of the other towns I worked with. Their main interest was, we need to have industry here. We need to have jobs here because all of our children have moved away. Mm-hmm. And we want them to come back. and it was all very older people. Then I worked with another town. I probably shouldn't mention their name.
But it rhymes with.
But, and they were very nice, same age group in the decision making, because all of their children also moved away. They didn't want to change a thing.
They didn't like their kids. They didn't want them coming back.
No, they didn't want to change how things were going. They were just angry that they weren't getting jobs. They felt like it should just come.
So they weren't being proactive about it.
They didn't want to change. And just their approach to how they saw life in their town and what they thought their town should do was very, very different. Mm-hmm. But they were the same distance from Charleston, the city of Charleston. And they really developed very similar, in a similar fashion. But the people there were very, very different, even though they were just like 10 minutes from each other.
Yeah, that's interesting. Just each place, like you said, has a real sense of place and culture. Before we go on, let's say hello to Chelsea and Tracy and Mary, who's kind of in and out, and Laura. Thanks for being here, you guys. And if you have any questions, put them in the chat.
You know, it's interesting what you're saying, because my sister went to college in a very small town in Texas, and she was talking about the state representative from there was supposedly selling drugs, but then the judge was his brother. And, you know, it's like no one could get in trouble because this one family kind of ruled the county, you know, and sort of made, you know, set the standard. And, you know, it's kind of scary when that happens. So,
yeah,
but
I know lots of insight into school politics, which are just crazy too. But yeah, my husband, when we lived in Texas too, I mean, there were superintendents that were embezzling. There was some crazy stuff going on. And, you know, they were caught and held accountable, most of them, I think, or else just moved out. There's a big thing in education where they just move people or promote them. But yeah, even school politics, I mean, you can't escape the crazy.
Well, moving on to something positive, let's talk about Tori, True's best friend. And we really liked her too. And we both thought, you know, it had to be hard for True to have to suspect her friend, but yet she kind of had reason to. So was that kind of hard to point a finger at her? I mean, you had such a great cast of potential suspects and with varied kind of reasons for doing what they did. I thought you did a good job of that. It felt really well developed.
Oh, thank you. I love Tori because she's who I want to be. She's real outgoing and tries things, and she messes up, but she doesn't care. She keeps going.
Your alter ego.
Yeah. I would love to be more like her, and even her recklessness. And of course, because of the situation where she puts herself out there, of course, she's going to be a suspect, I think. It just was inevitable. As I was writing it, was like, she has to be one of the suspects. I don't think that in my original plot plan, I'm trying to remember, it's sometimes hard to remember 2 years back. I don't think she was a suspect. I think she became one as I was writing it. And it was like, she has to be just because of who she is.
I was just hoping all along that it wasn't actually her. I was like, no, she can't be your best friend. No, Tori can't be responsible for this. No.
I don't know if you guys do this. So I'm very much a plotter, but as I write the mysteries, almost always my whodunit changes.
Yes, for me, definitely.
Almost always.
Yeah.
Mine never changes who it is, but I do have surprises along the way. But when you said you were a planner, I was thinking if she was an urban planner, that's going to carry over. But
yeah, you have that kind of brain.
So it's kind of like revising your plan as you go.
Then. Yeah, then I have to go.
You have, Diane, the number brain and the law brain, all of which needs to be really logical. And so Dorothy, you too. So it makes sense that you guys are more plotters and your brain processes that way. My brain is like chaotic.
The thing I found hard about that though is not telegraphing things. And like sometimes I'll even screw up in the editing process where I'll mention something that hasn't happened yet because I know it, but you know, so it's easier to make that mistake when you kind of know where it's going, I think, and forget the order that things come in when you're during revision. But
that's a good point. I plotted my earlier mysteries so much. I think I telegraphed everything. Everyone said, "Oh, I could say who it was immediately." I was like, I probably just told you who it was as I introduced them.
Put a little spotlight on them.
And here's
I played the dun 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 as he walked in.
That's when you have to change it up at the very end. Once this happened to me at the very end, I was like, I don't want this person to be the guilty one. So I ended up changing and having to go back and rework and rewrite. But, you know, when you think you've telescoped it, then you just got to switch it up.
I'm gonna have to try that sometime just to see if I can just plot it out without knowing who it is and just decide at the end and see if I like that. Because do you feel like your processes are constantly changing? Is your story like tweaking or trying something new just to see what feels more exciting or just makes it go faster, or do you kind of have a process that's tried and true?
The more books I write, the less I plot. I don't know. Am I getting lazy? I don't. I kind of like the wild and free and able to play with some different ideas and go down wrong ends. But sometimes you have to throw out a couple of chapters if you do it that way.
Oh my gosh, no, I can't throw out anything I write anymore.
That's like throwing out a book. No.
Okay, so we have, hey, Tanya, good to see you here. And Gracelyn, so glad you guys are here.
Yay.
Yeah, no, I can't, like, my first book, I had a file with like deleted scenes and stuff like that. No more. Like, I figure out how to use that scene. If I wrote it, it's going in the book somehow. I'm not throwing anything away. Okay, so The Maltese Falcon. Do you have history with that book? Is that a favorite of yours?
I really don't. I watched the movie. I was trying to find a book that had an interesting history as a valuable book. Really, that's how I came on it. I wanted a book that you could look at it and know, because some books you look at it and you don't know if it's the first edition or not. Mm-hmm. And I wanted something that you really had to know if it's the first edition. So there would be a little bit of question for a while. Is this the first edition book? Or
I've been doing a lot of research about that myself for my Book Magic series, the book that I'm writing now, because first editions play heavily into the one I'm working on right now. And it's really interesting to see like how you identify it as a first edition. In the little clues they leave that are left.
Yeah, and it's not the same for every book. Right. That's the weird thing about it. You have to actually just do the research and know that this, like the Maltese Falcon had 2 copyright dates, or one was the copyright date and one was the printed on date, and it was 2 dates. So if you looked at it, you would think it was a second printing. Mm-hmm. Because the copyright date was a year earlier. And so that, I like that idea.
Yeah, I think that Little Women might be similar, because I think it was written in a serial fashion. So part of it was released, here, and part of it was released here, but then, together it had 2 dates. Like, how do you choose which one to put,
Yeah, publishing is such a weird thing that way.
Well, I remember just, getting published and having to learn about going in and looking at that 2, 3, 4, that little line of numbers, and that's how you figure out what print run it was. And all
I have no idea what you're even talking about.
She should know.
Do I have one of my books in here? Let's see. My indie stuff. I don't have one of my.
I've seen the numbers. I know.
Here's indie.
I never cared enough to go, what are those numbers about?
Yeah, there's like a page, and the copyright page, and there'll be a line of numbers that'll say like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or whatever. Okay, let me see.
I can't get it straight.
Yeah, do you see down there below where it says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 or whatever?
Yeah.
When you get to like the second printing, the 1 will be gone. and it'll just say 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
Really?
Oh,
Yeah.
I gotta go look at my books right now. Can we pause?
Yeah. You want to go do some research? So it's a research trip.
Yeah, because they don't sell it. I mean, I've never been told that I've gone into a second or a third printing. So actually once. I was told once at the very beginning, because I think the agent's excited for you, the editor's excited for you. It's your first book. But since then, no.
I was told after we just signed another contract. So yeah, my editor was very good about keeping that quiet until we signed a new contract and agreed to terms. And it's like, oh, by the way, you're doing well. It's like, yeah, so another character we loved was Jace. So
yeah.
And we felt like it felt very authentic that, she remembered him and she had these feels and these, memories. And he's just like, who are you again?
Who are you?
Why
are you snarling at me right now?
So authentic. So authentic.
Yeah, so we're kind of curious, like, where that's going. And is that going to be a big romantic arc across the series? And what's the plan for them? Or
yeah, I'm trying to decide, should they be together or shouldn't they? I don't know if he's the happily ever after, the happily for now,
Well, and the second book we haven't read the second. I haven't read the second book yet because we started with the first one, but the second one just came out. So does Jace have competition?
Not in the second book, no. Well, sort of.
Uh-oh. The groundwork's been laid.
Sort of, kind of, yeah.
His potential competition. That's maybe even more fun because we can see where that goes.
You have to decide if that's the murderer or not. The competition.
Oh, okay. All right. Good. I'm up for the game. So is there a model for Jace? Like, I always have an actor or actress who's playing my characters and I hear them in my voice. I have their pictures here. I totally use that because I see them that way. Do you have somebody in mind for Jace?
I can't do that. I've never been able to do it. They're in my head. I can see them in my head. They don't look like an actor.
No. All mine look like Matthew McConaughey lately. I don't know why. I like him so much more after I listened to him read his green lights. So now every hero is Matthew McConaughey.
I think the pictures in my head are cartoons because I like cartoons so much, and my life pictures, my dreams are sometimes cartoons.
Really?
Oh, wow. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Scooby-Doo.
Oh,
That's Scooby-Doo. Well, and I mean, that kind of goes along with the cozy mystery covers. A lot of them are, they're cartoony. So
that's right.
Really interesting, though.
What's your favorite cartoon?
What's my favorite cartoon? Well, let's see. I've been like Scooby-Doo. I like, I hate to say a favorite. My goodness. We've been watching, since I have an 8-year-old now, I've been watching kid appropriate ones lately. Mm-hmm. And so Molly of Denali is a very entertaining one. For a little older, I like the Avatar series.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed those. I can't get my daughter Avery to get into them. Maybe when she gets a little older. She's like, what's this?
My husband and kids love the Avatar too. I grew up with the Flintstones and all of that, but our kid years were the Rugrats and SpongeBob. I love SpongeBob. I just think it's hilarious, but I think it's also really nostalgic too.
Avery loves SpongeBob. Her cousins got her onto that one when she was really little. They're a lot older.
That one everybody could enjoy too. And I felt that way about the Shrek movies too. Like there's a lot of adult humor in there that, yeah. And I'm a Simpsons fan. I know it's very irreverent, but I always related to Lisa Simpson.
I wouldn't
she was my aspirational character.
I wouldn't let my kids watch The Simpsons. Diane.
Oh, really? I would watch it as a family.
I was like, that is not appropriate. No, I'm not having it on the house.
We're like, that's not appropriate.
I watched The Simpsons, Mom.
To me, the thing that bothered me more, I couldn't stand violence. I didn't like violent stuff. But if it's just silliness, and they had a lot of funny lines and stuff too. I mean, they were pretty good with pointing out stuff in society or whatever, and coming up with funny lines. One of my favorite ones was Homer Simpson said something one time about he used to be happy until the weight of the world crushed his spirit. And I was like, that's how I feel sometimes. The weight of the world has crushed my spirit.
Well, the best thing about The Simpsons, I love their Halloween episodes.
Oh, yeah.
Especially the Great Pumpkin one where the pumpkin comes and eats everybody.
Okay, I'm going to have to go look those up.
Okay, where are we? I've kind of lost track now where we are in the question.
I know. I think it's mine. So we kind of already talked about it though with your plotting versus pantsing, and we now know that you're a big plotter, but can you tell us anything more about your writing process? Like how long does it take you to write a book? And then how has your process changed? You said you plot less, but are there any other ways that it's changed over the years? How many books do you have published now?
I think it's 14.
So that's a good number.
It's hard to, I have some novellas that are almost book length, and when it goes to the ebook stuff, I get a little mushy there. So I've been writing a long time, and I write very slowly. I wish I wrote a lot faster, but I can't, and I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to write a messy first draft. So when I'm done with a book, I'm done with the book, except for little tweaks, because I am editing as I go, which is very slow, laborious, and it makes you do a lot of rework, because if you change something, then you have to change something that you already changed 500 times.
Yeah. I hear you.
and I feel like I always have to have the first chapter written, and it takes me sometimes as long to have a first chapter that I'm happy with as it is to write the rest of the book.
Do you write out of order ever?
Yes, I do. So when I get to, and I've learned this, when I get 3/4 into the book, like 3/4 written, I have a crisis of confidence or whatever, always. So now when it happens, I'm like, okay, it's happened. And then I write the ending. And then I write to the end, and that's how I solve it. And sometimes I'll write out of order if I'm stuck and I know what another scene is and I want to make my page goal for the day. I'll say, okay, I'm just going to go write that other scene, and I'll try to make it fit. Often though, when I get to where that scene is, it doesn't fit anymore.
For me, the idea of writing out of order was like an aha moment. It was so freeing because I wrote everything I wrote very linearly from the beginning. And it wasn't until I switched over to Scrivener that I was like, oh, I can write out of order and it still makes sense because it's all lined up right there. And now I do, and I move things around, and, something I thought was going to be towards the end ends up in the middle. And, it's a really freeing process for me to do it that way. But it took probably 10 years for me to get there.
Yeah, I had to kind of switch mine up because my editor kept saying, your ending feels rushed. Your ending feels rushed. I'm like, well, it was because the deadline was coming. So I finally, I'll write about 1/3 of the book, and then I'll go write the ending. And then it's like kind of like what you were saying, I'm sort of aiming for that ending. And I usually end up having to revise it some, but at least there's something there to work with so that it doesn't feel rushed and I can write. And it always makes me more happy with my endings. But
that's a good strategy.
Yeah, it just kind of gives me something to go for. But a lot of people say that their beginnings are hard. That to me, I think is almost the easiest part. The endings and the beginnings. I'm that sagging middle person. That's where I have a harder time. I love kicking things off.
Kill somebody or make them have sex.
Killing or kissing.
There we go. Problem solved. You're welcome.
What I've heard, whenever you're not sure where to go next, always think about what the villain is doing, and then that kind of helps you figure that out. So
I always throw in danger. I always throw in some danger element if I feel like it's slowing down. Okay, someone needs to, like you said, get killed or at least be in danger.
What book can I throw at my character? I've used that. I don't know where I'm going next. Who can I kill? And then I will. There's a body. I don't know where it came from. And suddenly I've got to create that whole side story for why this person existed and now doesn't. It works.
So we usually ask authors when we get toward the end where they're going next, but we've actually haven't used up too much of our time. So why don't you talk about what you've done before this so that the people that are watching can know what your other series are and what you've done before?
Sure.
And when you first got published.
When I first started writing 100 billion years ago, I wanted to write cozy mysteries, but I wasn't ready to be writing anything, I think. So I started writing romance because I was reading, I read a romance. I was like, oh, wow, this is what romance is. So I started writing romance. And that's where I got published in romance to begin with as Dorothy McFalls. I wrote some Regency romances and the line closed. And so then I wrote some paranormal romances and the publishing house went out of business. And then I wrote some erotic romances and they didn't close, but I moved on from that. And then I was working with an editor with one of my historical romances, and she said, you kind of have a cozy mystery voice. Would you like to write the White House Gardner mystery series for us?
Oh, that's
and
cool.
Of course you say yes.
Yeah. What's a cozy mystery? But yes.
So I wrote the White House Gardner mystery series, which was great fun because it was bringing in my past government work into play, and I got to go to Washington, D.C., which I love Washington, D.C. Mm-hmm. That's a city I've visited more than any other city except for the one I live in, and got to tour the White House, got to tour their gardens, and cool. It was just so much fun to write that series.
Did you just take an ordinary tour? Or did you get a special tour because of the book and the research that you needed to do?
Yeah, I tried to get a special tour because of the book, but when I said I'm writing a book set at the White House where people get killed, they stopped talking to me.
Like, she's dangerous, put her on the list.
They wouldn't tell me anything after that. So, yeah, I kind of stalked. I stalked Secret Service agents too.
Oh, Secret Service agents. I bet that was helpful.
Yeah.
So, Melissa, you're going to contact Matthew McConaughey and say, well, I'm writing a cozy mystery set at your house, so I need to come see it.
Only I could. He is a Texas boy, so I could try.
Susan Slavinsky says, loved your discussion of bookless libraries at Jungle Red Writers. It was very informative. The comments were also interesting. And like most of the commenters, while I appreciate having access to ebooks and audiobooks during the pandemic, I still prefer having a book in hand.
Yeah, and I agree. As much as I enjoy reading my ebooks, the books I find when I'm at the library, if they have the ebook of it, I'll get it. But I have to be walking around and just kind of exploring. And you can't do that as well on a search engine.
Yeah.
You can, but it's not as good.
I'm like one of those memes, like in living color memes where, I have stacks of books that haven't been read, but I'm going to go buy some more. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
Well, I just bought some more yesterday. Stuff in your fridge, just to see what you're in the mood for. You don't necessarily go, oh, I'm going to eat this at this time and eat that. It's what your taste is at that particular time. I always loved the discount bookstores at like the outlets, the books that either, they were remaindered or whatever. I found some of the best authors there that I might not have discovered otherwise. That's our first discovered Christopher Moore, and his book was The Stupidest Angel, and it was put out at Christmas time. And I just thought, oh, that's a funny Christmas story. Then I ended up loving his stuff. So,
do you know that we have one of those bookstores at our outlets, Diane?
No,
we do.
I haven't seen it. I only go to like certain parts of the outlet. The ones in Mebane?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well, we need to go there next week. Now I know where we need to go walk. We'll go walk tomorrow.
Okay.
When I was a teenager, they had one of those stores and it was going out of business. And so they were having a 90% off sale of the already discounted books. And so my mom let me go in and buy as many books as I wanted because they were like pennies. And I discovered this Modesty Blaze series, which is a kind of kick-ass. She was in Europe, and she was a thief that became sort of a vigilante for justice. And I love that series so much, and I think it shaped who the writer I became. Reading that series.
That's really good. How old were you?
Oh, probably about 14 or 15.
Huh.
Did you know at that age that you wanted to be a writer?
Oh yeah, I was born wanting to be a writer. I've always.
With a little detour in urban planning.
Yeah, for me, writing felt like it was too unattainable of a goal. So, and I never got along with English teachers. I bucked against.
Were you a troublemaker in class?
No, because I was too shy, but
I
would think in my mind, no, you're wrong.
If you were on the shy side, they should have taken you under their wings and like ushered you up. Bad English teachers you've had. I'm sorry. I was an English teacher. I do not approve.
I felt the same though, that I would have felt like it was an unattainable thing. I mean, so I never really even thought about becoming a writer. I knew I liked to write. Like I always loved writing things in my English class and stuff. But the thought of majoring in English in college never even crossed my mind because we were such a practical family. And what would you do with it? You know, it didn't have a direct career path. So yeah, I went. And then later on, when I started doing it for fun and then realized, a lot of people come to it circuitously through something else. And in fact, I think that's a good way to do it for commercial fiction because then you kind of have done something like even Melissa with, having studied English, she was a teacher. So, and all this stuff with the school board politics, you learn these things that you can bring to your books and have life experiences. And that's
Murder Gone Awry, ripped from the headlines, school board headlines. Now, I had a college professor. The only creative writing class I took in college, there was a TA heading the section that I was part of. And I won't tell you the whole story, but it involved a car theft and my roommate and fingerless gloves. Remember, it was in the 80s, so it was Madonna era. And I wrote this story. I fictionalized this story about this situation that she roped me into bitterly because of a bad breakup. Anyway, I got like a B- on that story. And the only comment this guy wrote on my paper was write what you know. And I was like, are you kidding me?
Oh my goodness.
That was true. That was real. But I hung up my creative writing pencil for years after that. I was like, I'm done. I'm not going to write anymore. You dashed my hopes.
Yeah, I think that's one reason I didn't pursue creative writing because whenever I got comments, in classes, it was crushing.
It is. It is.
It's hard.
Sometimes just the opposite. I found when people tell me I can't do something or I'm not good at it, it's like, I'm going to show you. Yeah. And maybe that comes from being the youngest kid and, you can't do this, you can't do that. Oh, yeah, stop me.
What are you going to do? So how many White House garden mysteries are there? And then
there's just the 3. Then I had my daughter and took some time off writing. And then when she was about 3 years old, I decided I couldn't not write any longer. And I started a new series, which was the Southern Chocolate Shop Gardener Mystery Series, which is set on a fictional Folly Beach.
Oh, yeah. We read that book like last year, didn't we? One of them? I feel like we did. Or featured you. I did something. I remember.
You did a feature. I think you did feature. Okay. Yeah. And that was the first book where I got an agent. That was very exciting. And getting an agent kind of changes everything. I was doing my whole career without an agent from then.
Wow.
Beforehand. And that's very limiting. And so she sold to Crooked Lane. And that, I didn't know anything about Crooked Lane, but they were fun to work with. It's a little bit different. You got to be in the Doubleday Book Club, which, growing up, I'd always look at the Doubleday Book Club in the newspaper and go, "Oh, now I'm in it." So that was kind of fun.
That's cool.
And but I wrote 3 of the books for Crooked Lane, and they decided sales weren't quite good enough, so they dropped me. And I've been indie for a while, publishing my romances. So I said, well, I'm just going to keep this one going. So I have book 4 out as indie published, and I am going to continue that one, as well as keep writing the Beloved Book Room mystery series, as long as they let me write that one.
Yeah.
And try to do 2 books a year. That's my goal. Then the pandemic happened, and I'm homeschooling.
Okay, I was wondering, because I see your posts like, where in the world are we, or where in the country are we? So I was wondering if you were homeschooling Avery.
Right. Well, kind of homeschooling. She's doing an online school, but you still have to be there.
Yeah. But it allows you to travel.
Right. It's a self-directed online school, so it's not like Zoom or anything like that. That just doesn't work for us. So she watches a video lecture and then takes quizzes. And
then she's getting real life experience with all the different places you're going.
Yes. And so we bought a van.
Cool.
and we're driving around the U.S. to...
I've heard of people doing that. I didn't realize you were doing that. That's so cool.
Yeah, get to get out, and it's sort of social distancing, because when you're at a park, you're really not in contact with anybody, and you go hiking, you might pass somebody, but not usually.
Yeah, and you can step to the side of the trail or something. Yeah.
What's been your favorite place that you've been traveled to this past year, or do you have a favorite?
Yeah, I do. I went to New Mexico for the first time in September, and I'm in love with Santa Fe.
Oh, really? Oh,
I had a feeling I would be.
It's pretty artsy there, right?
There. Yeah.
I haven't either.
So what did you love about it?
Just the feeling. It's like a little big town, and
it's really artsy, right?
It's very artsy, and I grew up in the South. I've been here my whole life in Charleston, and Santa Fe is like going to another planet, really. The plants are different. The buildings are different. Everything's so different, but it's at such a livable scale. It's comfortable. It felt very comfortable there.
That's really cool.
So plans for retirement?
Maybe.
Did your husband, did he love it as much as you did?
He did enjoy it, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, it's on my list of places to go. And Sedona. Is Sedona New Mexico or Arizona?
That's in Arizona.
Okay. I love Sedona. I have been there. That was a cool place. I want to go to Taos too. I've never seen Taos.
Yeah, we did New Mexico, and then we did Taos, and that was really lovely too. So that's like a smaller version of New Mexico, of Santa Fe. So it's like, yeah. The only thing that really surprised me was it is very hot there in September.
The desert. That's why I would never want to live there.
Well, and Melissa and I are both from Texas, so we're like, hot. Yeah. We know hot.
Yeah. When I moved here, people were warning me about August and how hot it was. And I was like, August came and went, and I was like, what? It wasn't hot.
Didn't even bat an eye. Yeah. I know. Yeah.
You've not been to Texas.
Yeah, we drove through Texas. It was really warm. We went to Palo Duro State Park, which is in the little pump out in Texas. It was 112 degrees.
Oh, cool day.
Our van was very unhappy. All sorts of alarms went off.
Oh, wow. That's kind of scary. Because you break down. That's a remote place.
Yeah, we ended up not camping there. We said, we don't want to die here. We went to a hotel.
Yeah, that was a smart move.
We stayed at a cabin that was like on the canyon kind of edge. And so these winds would come up. And so all night long, this wind was blowing through like a crack somewhere. And it sounded like someone was playing the harmonica all night.
Oh, wow.
This harmonica. Like this harmonica kept us up half the night. But it was beautiful out there, but very, very rugged country.
Yes.
But if you ever go through Texas again, go to Big Bend. Did you go to Big Bend at all? I've only been there one time. It's on my bucket list forever. We finally went there for my 50th birthday, but it's even more remote. It's down in the bottom part, down by Mexico, the Rio Grande River. But it's one of the least visited national parks. But
it's so hard to get to.
Yeah, so it has some
it's like 3 days driving from the top of Texas to the bottom of Texas.
But it's peak time is like November to March. People go in the winter because if you can't go in the summer. I mean, it's just too hot. We went, it was very into September, and it was still so hot. We were afraid to go on some of the trails because we thought we can't carry enough water that if we get in trouble, we'll get there and back. We just didn't want to take a chance, pass it out or something. Plus there was tarantulas everywhere.
Oh my gosh.
But it was not selling it.
So where are you going next then on your van trips?
I don't know. We need to do the Northeast. I've never been up like to Maine or Vermont. I'd like to do that. In the Gold Coast where, in New York, where S. Scott Fitzgerald's mansion. I'd like to see that too.
Maine is on our bucket list, like pretty soon, hopefully. Every time
Acadia Park. That would be beautiful.
Yeah.
My next door neighbors, their son went to college in Vermont. And he really like it up there. But yeah, I've never been there. Just Bob Newhart's Inn. I used to like to watch that. Their little inn in Vermont.
I do too.
Oh, I forgot about that show.
Now the song's in my head.
So we are coming up to the end. So Dorothy, you have Perfect Bind that just came out recently. And so what is next after that? So are you working on the next one in the series?
So the next one is just recently turned in. I don't have a release date. And I know they don't like the title because they keep calling it book number 3 instead of using the title.
Oh, what's the title? Can you tell us?
What was your working title?
My working title, I love the title. It's Book Clubbed to Death.
That's cute. I like
it.
There's
a graphic or something?
I don't know. There's a club to death that Berkeley Primetime did, and maybe they think it's too close to that.
Oh.
And have they thrown out other ideas?
Yeah, so we've not really discussed any other ideas. I have a couple jotted down that they're all right. They're probably not great. So
you should post a question in the Book Warriors. You get all kinds of suggestions. I'm telling you, get the best readers, give us the best titles. I have a whole list. I could write the Bread Shop series forever if I just had to go by the titles.
I had a reader that emailed me a bunch of titles that I ended up using in my Paw Enforcement series. I was like, yeah, thank you very much. And then I had to write a song, and people gave me lyrics, helped me come up with lyrics for the song.
Oh,
oh my goodness.
So if he doesn't write long enough, what should my next line be? Well, what should my next line be? Maybe the writer will.
Did they get a songwriting credit? So what's next for you after Book Clubbed to Death? So you've already turned that one in.
Yeah, so that one's turned in. And so I need to be writing the next Southern Chocolate Shop mystery series. Mm-hmm. But in my pandemic madness, I'm writing a very odd women's fiction from the point of view of a tree.
Oh, tell us more.
So I'm writing it's I don't know if you remember the book Jonathan Livingston Seagull.
Yes, Tracy.
As I was about to say, yeah.
I love that book.
Growing up. Copies of it.
Yeah, I love that book too. Yeah, so
I love that book. So I want to do something like that, but with a tree. And it's sort of a spiritual journey, a tree that becomes the mother tree, but really shouldn't, we're all in that position where we are becoming the matriarchs of our family.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of feeling that right now. And so I'd like to write that. And I've been thinking, for some reason, I just keep thinking about trees and how they've learned that they communicate and that they really do take care of their own.
Yeah.
And I heard where there's trees that have died and they're just stumps. And the other trees in the forest are just, they're keeping them alive. Those stumps, because the researchers say they have information that the whole forest needs.
Because all of their roots are intertwined underneath and connected. Yeah.
Yeah. But they don't have to keep sending them, because they do send more food, like the mother tree sends more food to her own seedlings than she does to other seedlings. So, they can tell who's who, and they do form friendships, and it's just fascinating. And those stumps that they keep alive must have a wealth of information, of story. Maybe not stories like we tell stories, but and so I just keep thinking about it. So I'm going to do that with writing NaNoWriMo. See how far I get.
Oh, fun. That's a great idea.
Well,
the mother tree, I keep thinking mothership and aliens.
I keep thinking the giving tree.
Yeah.
But, the rings too, can't they tell from the rings, like, oh, there was a fire, 100 years ago because this one ring has whatever char in it, and there was the drought year or whatever. They can tell by some of that by the rings. It kind of does give like a
history. When they look at, I think they call them cookies, or the slice. I was talking to a naturalist, and he pulled one out, and he said, I can tell you everything about this tree. I can tell you where in the forest it was living, where the sun was hitting it, because the bark is different. And he went through that whole life of that tree just by looking at that. And that was just fascinating.
That is.
Wow. And our tree guy was talking about, identifying the different, because to us, we look at the trees and we're kind of like, well, we can see a little different the leaves, but other than, maybe in the bark. But he was like, oh, well, these ones have branches that come, they're always in pairs, and then these ones alternate. And that's part of what they use besides the leaves and stuff to identify them. It's like we started looking around with a lot more, discerning eye at the trees around us, and just how the forest is healthier when there's a mix. And I thought that's kind of like people, it's better when you've got people with different talents and abilities and backgrounds all kind of working together. It makes for a healthier society, So I thought that was really interesting too. All these kind of metaphors in the forest. Metaphorist.
Metaphor. That's good.
You can have that.
That's cool. Well, thank you, Dorothy, for being with us. It's been fun.
Thank you.
Congrats on the new book, Broken Spine, and then the perfect, what is it? What's the next one?
Perfect Bind.
Perfect Bind, number 2, and the third one, possibly Book Club to Death, but TBD.
That's right.
All right. Well, thank you so much. It was great having you.
Yeah, thank you. And
thanks everyone.
Anybody who wants to pen, just put on the loop, and I'll mail them a Warrior Librarian pen.
Oh, that is so cool. That is
Nice.
so cool. Yeah. I want one.
Freebies. Yay.
Cool. Okay. All right. So y'all put your name in.
I'll put it in I'll mention it on the group too.
Okay. Perfect. All right, everybody. Good night, Book Warriors. Have a great night.